Hey guys, Pastor Ben here with another review and reflection. I feel like I owe a little word of explanation for having a bit of a gap here between posting review videos. But the reason for that is that my wife and I are expecting another child due any day now. And so there's been a lot of kind of busyness and craziness trying to get things ready for that. So at this point, we are, I think, as ready as we can be, just waiting for him to decide when he wants to show up. So thank you for everyone who is praying for us, and just an explanation of why there's been a bit of a gap. And I'm hoping to record a couple of videos today so that I can have those scheduled to go out. So hopefully there won't be too much of a gap or downtime. But if there is a bit of a different kind of release schedule, it's probably because I have less time to read and less time to record book reviews. But right now I do have a book that I would like to share some thoughts about with you. And it's this little book by Dale Ralph Davis called Joshua, No Falling Words. So this is kind of part of my ongoing little series. I just finished preaching through the book of Joshua in the Old Testament. And so I'm doing some reviews of the books that I read through in working through that series. So again, it's not every resource that I used, but I'm trying to give reviews of especially the kind of print version of books that I read pretty much cover to cover throughout my series, and just share some thoughts on them. So this commentary by Dale Ralph Davis, this edition of it is published by Christian Focus. Came out, I think, about 10 years ago, this edition. But the book was first published by Baker back in the late 80s. I think 88 was when this was first published. And it's in sort of conservative, evangelical reform circles, sort of a go-to commentary for the book of Joshua. When I was getting ready to work through this series, and I was asking, more established, older pastor friends, hey, what would you recommend? Pretty much everybody said, hey, you got to get Dale Ralph Davis on the book of Joshua. Dale Ralph Davis has pastored in various Presbyterian churches. He also taught Old Testament at Reformed Theological Seminary down in Jackson, Mississippi. So he's coming at this project with kind of both of those hats on. On the one hand, he's got his Old Testament scholarly hat, and he'll deal with questions about language. He'll deal with critical views versus more conservative or evangelical views. You can tell in the footnotes he'll have extensive discussions sometimes about different textual questions or exegetical questions that might pop up in the more technical commentaries. So it's a good resource to kind of get a quick and simple guide through some of those more complex and less simple issues that may come up. But he's also wearing his pastor hat, his preacher hat, and he's trying to think about how a preacher or a teacher or just a layperson who's maybe working through the book of Joshua and wants to get a better understanding of it would what they would need as they're working through the text. So this book is actually a really good balance. I can see why so many people recommended it to me, because what he'll do typically in 8 to 10 pages, sometimes less than that, is take a portion of the book of Joshua and walk you through it. He'll give you kind of his outline exegetically. At the end, there's always a list of sort of study questions. So you could actually go through this for your own personal worship. You could do it in kind of a small group Bible study setting. It's also just a great thing to sort of get a preacher thinking about some of the implications or applications or connections of the text. And Dale Ralph Davis, if you've read any of his stuff, he has a very kind of dry, wry sense of humor, but he's a funny guy. He's not sort of writing in this stilted, scholarly voice. He's trying to be a little bit more dynamic and fresh. So that helps. It does a good job of kind of spanning those different approaches to a commentary. Now, having said that, I think that is its strength, is that you can read it and get a sense of the scholarship. You can read it and get some funny illustrations or applications. You can read it and get just a better kind of exegetical understanding of the text or some ideas to outline it. It works for a small group Bible study or personal devotions. It works for a preacher or a teacher who's looking at taking a class or a congregation through the text. So it does all of those things. Now, there are probably other books that would be stronger in different ones of those areas, because they're kind of specializing in the scholarly side of things or the homiletical side of things. But this is a good just sort of all-around tool, a good all-around resource. There's probably specialized books that would dive deeper or do more in those different areas. So I don't think this is the only resource you can have, but it's a really good one to have, and it's kind of a jack of all trades in terms of its usefulness. And Dale Ralph Davis has written a number of these commentaries, which have been published by Christian Focus now. He's got some on Judges and some on Samuel. So a number of these Old Testament, especially historical or narrative works, he does a really good job of. So this was a book that I really enjoyed. I found very helpful. I read it every single week. The only thing I had to kind of adapt is that he kind of went at a different pace than I did. So sometimes he would go quicker than I would. I followed a bit of a slower schedule. In fact, the next book review that I will release is going to be the book that I pretty much followed in terms of how it divided the text of Joshua. I made a few changes, but stuck closer to that. So he covers the whole book, 24 chapters, in just 21 weeks. So there's quite a few chapters, especially as you get into the book, that he'll cover, maybe 2 or 3 chapters of Joshua in one of his chapters in the book. So there wasn't always as much material from this. Sometimes I'd only have, 2 or 3 pages to read for the passage that I was preaching on that Sunday, because he kind of broke it up. But again, still useful things, helpful all along the way. He follows in his kind of structure the general flow that many scholars do for Joshua. Part 1, entering the land, so Joshua 1 through 4. Part 2, taking the land, so Joshua 5 through 12. Although I actually kind of followed that same outline, only I put entering the land as Joshua 1 through 5, and then began taking the land with chapter 6. But that's something for preachers and others to kind of hammer out and debate. Part 3, possessing the land, chapters 13 through 21, and then part 4, retaining the land, Joshua 22 through 24. So he has a very kind of standard approach to the flow of things, but he does a good job of helping you think through the exegetical divisions, but also sort of the homiletical approach. And he is very aware of the scholarship and debates, especially some of the historical or critical questions that come up with things like the sun standing still, or something like that. So he does a good job of kind of guiding you through that from a Reformed, evangelical, conservative, scholarly perspective. So I think this is a great resource if you're going to teach or preach through Joshua. It's definitely one you should have. If you were just wanting to go through the book in family worship or in your own devotions, or maybe with some friends or a small group, this would also be a useful tool. So I would highly recommend the book of Joshua. No Falling Words is the subtitle, by Dale Ralph Davis.